बच्चों ये अर्ली किंगडम एसएससी सोशल स्टडीज़ चैप्टर 6 है, इसको हम लोग पढ़ते हैं ध्यान से। About 25 years ago, big kingdom developed in the Ganga Valley. Each had a well-defined territory and government. Some of these kingdoms later grew into the powerful empires. Sources क्या होते थे? Our main source of information about this period was the Vedic texts, such as the Brahmans and Upanishads, and Buddhist texts, such as the Jatak tales. They refer to the Janpadas and Mahajanpadas which exist in this period. Janpada and Mahajanpadas क्या होता है? You have read earlier that the Aryans lived in the village. A person's life revolved around the tribe. A big change came about around this time. Iron began to use to the much larger scale. Iron began to use on a much larger scale. The thick forest of the Ganga plains had not allowed expansion in this region, but now iron tools helped people to clear the forest where later bigger settlements developed. The small tribes of the earlier period gave way to the large kingdom. ध्यान से पढ़िए दोस्त. The small tribes of the earlier period gave way to the large kingdoms. These territories came to be called Janpadas. The larger and more powerful Janpadas were called Mahajanpadas. आगे पढ़ते हैं हम लोग, देखते हैं. There were 16 Mahajanpadas in the Ganga Valley in the 6th century BCE. They were named after the ruling or the most important tribe in the area. Each Mahajanpadas had a capital which was generally fortified. Huge walls of stone or brick were built around this city. This was perhaps to resist attack by the neighboring kingdom. The Mahajanpadas were of two types, republics and monarchies. Republics क्या होते थे? A republicans Mahajanpadas was ruled by a group elected by the common people. There was no king. We remember, in republics there was no king. Decisions were taken by a majority vote. The Sakyas and the Lishvis were the important republics. Now monarchies. The monarchical Mahajanpadas were ruled by the king. The king was very powerful. He had a large army and many sources of revenue. Now, some knowledge about the Ashwamedh. The Ashwamedh or the horse sacrifice ceremony was often performed by the powerful king. The king, wishing to perform the ceremony, set a horse free to roam through the kingdoms of other rulers. If a king allowed these sacred horses to pass through his territory, it indicates that he had accepted the superiority of the first king. But if a king stopped the horse, it means that he was challenging the authority of the first king. A battle followed such challenges. At the end of the whole process, there was a grand ceremony. Kings of the neighboring kingdom were invited to it. The king who was to perform the sacrifice was proclaimed the king of the kings. Priests chanted tales of his glory, performed rituals, and sprinkled sacred water on him. At the end of ceremony, the horses were sacrificed as a gift to the god. No, आगे बढ़ते हैं दोस्त. Kingship was hereditary. The king's son succeeded him to the throne. Magad, Vats, Avanti, and Kosla were the greatest of these kingdoms. Which form of government, republican or monarchical, was the better suited to this, and why? Is modern day India a republic or monarchy? India is a republic. Now taxation. What is taxation? Taxation होता है, large armies required for more money. Therefore, the kings began to collect taxes on the regular basis. They appointed officers to collect taxes from the people. Most people were farmers, so agriculture was the main source of the revenue. The farmer gave 1/6. ध्यान दीजिए. The farmer gave 1/6 of their produce of the king. This was called a bhag or share of the produce. During this time, the farmers began to produce the more from their land. This was because of the two factors. First, the iron plough came to be used on the larger scale. It was an important over the wooden plough. Second, the practice of the transplanting paddy, that is growing saplings separately and then planting them in the fields, became common. This ensured that many more plants survived and hence more grains were produced. Increased production meant the king got a greater share of the revenue. There were other sources of revenue. Craftsmen such as the carpenters, potters, and weavers paid taxes either in cash or kind or by offering free service to the king. There were also taxes on buying and selling of goods. Trade got a boost during this period due to the introduction of money. Until this time, trade had been carried through barter. Now, coins of the silver and copper punch marked coin began to be used. This led to an increase in the trade. Inland trade was bricks. Goods were sent far and wide. Bimbisar, the king of Magad, built roads and bridges throughout his empire. Bimbisar, the king of Magad, builds roads and brings bridges throughout his empire. This encouraged trade. Besides land routes, trade was carried out through sea routes. The main article traded were silk, muslin, perfumes, and ivory. Now, towns, villages that grew in the size became towns. Towns also grew around centers of trade and crafts. Sometimes artisans and craftsmen came together to work as a group. These places developed into towns. Jैसे Ujjaini, Vaisali, Ayodhya, Kaushambi, Tamralipti and Champa were some important towns of this period. Society, the people were grouped into the Varnas. There were four Varnas: Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaisya and Shudra. These Varnas were decided on the basis of the birth. This means that if a person was born in a Brahmin family, that person would automatically become a Brahmin. People of different Varnas performed different tasks. The Brahmins were expected to teach and Vedas and perform religious rituals and sacrifices. The Kshatriya were warriors and fought wars. The Vaisya were involved in the trade and agriculture. Only the first three Varnas could study the Vedas and perform sacrifices. The Shudra had to serve the other three groups. In addition, there was another group of people, the untouchables, who were ever lower in social ranks than the Shudras. The birth-based Varna system was disliked by the people on the lower Varnas. Over time, the Varna system became more and more rigid. Professions became hereditary and there were separate rules for each Varna. Now, Magad. Magad was a monarchy ruled by a king during this period. It was the most powerful Mahajanpada. This was due to the many factors. Magad was located in the Gangestic basin where the soil was very fertile and yielded good harvest. Land tax was high and it provides a large income for the kingdom. This enabled the kings to maintain a large army. The forest provided Magad with timber and elephants. Timber was used to build houses, forts, and chariots. Elephants were used in the army. Magad had large deposits of iron ore. Iron was used to make agriculture implements, tools, and weapons of war. Magad was protected by nature. The old capital of Rajgriha, present-day Rajgir, was surrounded by hills on all sides. The new capital, Patliputra, present-day Patna, was situated along river Ganga. These were naturally barriers against any attack on the kingdom. Magad had a flourishing trade with other regions. Profits from trade also helped the king to maintain a large army. Magad was ruled by very powerful kings such as Bimbisar, Ajat and Mahapadma Nanda. They were always trying to expand their territories. Magad remained powerful for hundreds of years. The Sisunag and the Nand kings made the kingdom strong. It continued to remain powerful under the rule of the Mauryan kings. The Vaji Confederacy. The Vaji were a confederacy of many clans of whom the Lichvis were the most powerful. Their capital was Vaisali in present-day Bihar. You have read earlier in the lesson that the Lichvis were a republic. They were not ruled by a king. Decisions were taken by the people themselves. For example, if a major decision had to be taken, people gathered and discussed what was to be done. The Lichvis republic remained independent for a long time. Finally, Ajat conquered his Mahajanpada. Now, summary of this chapter. There were many Janpadas and Mahajanpadas. They were either republics or monarchies. A monarchical Mahajanpada was ruled by a king. He was very powerful and had a large army. There were many sources of revenue. Farmers, craftsmen, and traders gave taxes to the king. Overland overseas trade prospered. Many towns emerged. Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaisya, and Sudras were the four Varnas. Each performed a specific task. Magad was a powerful monarchy. It grew powerful because of various factors. The Lichvis formed the most powerful republic. Their capital was Vaisali.